Recording?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I would like to call to order this Thursday, August 15th, 2020.
Can't hear you.
I'd like to call to order this Thursday, August 15th, 2024 meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda. This is help. Now, you have to get really close. I know. There we go. Okay. Welcome again, everyone. In case you didn't hear me say that before, our first item on the agenda is 24-10, 6 Opening Hill Road, map 70, lot 1-1 to 1-14, zone RU1, applicant Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation, Incorporated. This is a special exception pursuant to section 5.4A and 3.4C for philanthropic and educational use of property, which use includes arts, architecture, and other philanthropic and educational exhibits, meetings, tours, on-site residencies, events, studio, and collaborative space. Applicant's administrative office and museum, gallery, store, all as more specifically and fully set forth in the statement of use and the project description as amended, which is included with the application and on file with the Planning and Zoning Commission. The continuation of the public hearing, and before I open it up further, I just want to introduce who's here. We have John Buza, our secretary, Andy Rubin, myself, Carol Stone, chair, Mike Brugda. Can you hear me? No. Can you hear me, Maria, over there? No. Okay. And then joining us via Zoom, we have Commissioners Jeff Downs, Janet Peckinpah, John Morgan, and Bob Reinhardt. Welcome, all of you. You're going to keep it right up. Right close, because they're fading in and out. For very long, I'm going to turn it over to other people. So, as I said, this is a continuation of the public hearing from August 1st. And I just want to make sure first that anyone who didn't have an opportunity to speak before has one last chance to speak before we hand it back over to the applicant. I think everyone here feels satisfied that their voice has been heard. So I'd like to invite the applicant to the podium. And is there a microphone there? You're going to have to share. You can share. Fans going tonight too, as you can notice.
Our presentation tonight. Good evening, Chris McKeon. Our presentation tonight is going to be in response to.
Excuse me, Chris, you're going to need to really enunciate.
Okay. Trying to get away from the fan too. We're going to begin with Michelle Napick, the president of the foundation. She is here virtually. We hand out a handout to you that she'll be going through on the screen. So I have printed for you folks what she'll be going through.
Hi, I want to make sure everyone can hear me because on this end, it sounds like you guys are in a fishbowl. So how's my audio?
We can't hear you very well, Michelle.
Yeah, the audio is really odd. Your audio feed to people online is really odd too. Is that any better?
No.
No.
I'm trying to see if I can set any more in here, because there's only 5 people in there, you can't hear it.
Is there a way to turn it up here, Erin?
So
I have the maximum volume
I do
up
there,
on the
too.
TV.
For some
So
reason
that,
it's muffled and you can't hear it.
but
I
that's
only
not
have
a
4 people.
Can't
Zoom.
hear in here either, so.
Oh.
Maria, you only
I
have
could hear Michelle fine when she was speaking. I don't know if that's because I'm on Zoom,
It
but
sounded like he was just like.
We hear you. We hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, try again, Michelle.
Okay, let's do audio check number 2. How's that? Because other people online have texted me that they can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. I can.
People in the room?
Not so
No,
much.
we cannot hear you. Get closer to the microphone, please, ma'am.
I am as close as I can get to my microphone, and the people online can hear me, so I think it's a Zoom issue at the moment.
The room. I mean, we can hear, it's just not
They can hear
that
the
loud.
people, excuse me. They can
Not
hear the people
everybody can
online
hear.
better than the people in the room.
If I literally raise my voice, is that any
Yes.
better?
Yes,
Okay.
You can go out real
All right. I'm gonna do my best to shout my way through this, and you can let me know how it's going. So, Michelle Napick, President and CEO of the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation. I really just want to start out by thanking all of the commissioners for their time and attention across the numerous hearings regarding this application for a special exception. I want to thank the neighbors deeply for sharing their concerns, their personal stories, and their visions of an ideal life in Madison and what that's all about. And the foundation strongly believes that the proposed uses for 6 Opening Hill Road can be a positive part of this experience. We hope you can extend the same deep listening and respect that we have shown as we provide closing comments for this evening. How's my sound? Are we okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you.
Good. I'm shouting in my own ear, but we'll do our best here. I really want to say that the level of care and commitment that the foundation board has dedicated to this matter is at a very high level. For the better part of 1 3/4 years, the board and emeritus members have devoted many hours involving the purchase, the visioning, the statement of use matters, all related to the property. We had 2023 visioning sessions, a November 2023 board meeting. Throughout these experiences, more than 20 members of the extended Tremaine family have personally been at the property, with more engaged virtually. We have a very hardworking subcommittee we call the Madison Working Group. They are on text standby all the time from me, and they contribute about 5+ hours a week to issues related to the property.
Michelle, we can hear you much better now, so you don't have to yell.
I found a volume control and it's working.
Thank you.
Fantastic. It was a different level of energy. You know.
I mean, if you want to maintain it, it's great, but
Okay.
don't have to shout.
Okay, this is good. Thank you for that. So our Madison Working Group, it's actually a 7-person group comprised of 2 staff members, myself and Rini Besaw, who many of you have met, and 5 members of the family. Hunter Tremaine is in the room with you tonight. He's the chair of this Madison Working Group, and he's our board chair-elect. Palmer DePietro, who's online, is our board chair. Marilyn DePietro is a design professional. Clayton DePietro is chair of our Art Legacy Committee, and Sarah Tremaine is a founding board member. So from the leadership level all the way through the board, there's been deep engagement. And many of the neighbors have met this group at our open house, and Hunter, Clayton, Sarah have been engaged at various hearings. We also have had anywhere from 4 to 6 family members present virtually at every hearing. And Chris and I attempted to arrange some in-person meetings between the 4 main couples who are represented by Attorney Pellegrino and the foundation's board and emeritus members. We really wanted to be able to listen, learn, and support adjustments to the statement of use. We were trying to do this so we could make these hearings less adversarial. But what happened, I think, is then from our experience, the neighbors didn't want to negotiate and therefore, or talk about potential conditions. So these meetings never materialized. So I just wanted you all to know that. And in my role as president and CEO, I've been there for every hearing. I am so sorry I'm not in the room today. It is absolutely for medical reasons. But I think a lot of you have known I have organized Zoom meetings and calls with neighbors, one-on-one, group. I've distributed my email, my personal cell phone number through letters to abutting neighbors. We have, again, just been deeply engaged, and we're trying to even meet sometimes hostile energy with open invitations and opportunities to connect. And we remain open to the relationship building. This is what we want. I also need to underscore that we are a very upstanding 501c3 nonprofit, tax exempt as a private foundation. Look, and the foundation is the owner of the property. It's not the family. So under every protection to you through the IRS and related law, there can be no self-dealing, no conflicts of interest related to the ownership of the property and any of the Tremaine family members. Any opposition proclamations that family members are lining their pockets, it's honestly, it's false and it's inaccurate. some of the level of the falsehoods have risen to sort of a legal claim of libel. We just haven't pursued that on defamation or slander. But we want you to be clear that this is not a commercial enterprise. There's no financial or benefits related to this flowing to any family members. And we've tried to make clear in the statement of use, the focus is philanthropic and educational. And that any of the revenue generating opportunities are ancillary and they are there to support the philanthropic and educational mission. I'm going to underscore again that we have a 40-year track record, a highly ethical grant-making institution. We've distributed more than 100 million across our lifetime. Our endowment size today is between 80 and 90 million, and we make approximately 4 million in distributions every year. And most of that goes to our 3 strategic program areas. So if you want to know who we are about the arts, we are about learning differences in the field of education, we are about the environment. Look, we serve very niche mission-based pursuits in the arts. We support curatorial practice and the Emily Hall Tremaine Exhibition Award. These have national footprints, even though they're niche, they have national footprints, which is why you don't see specific funding in the region. We've never said we are a place-based funder until this point in time. So throughout these 40 years, we've had national footprints in the arts. We support artists, artist professional development, like business and entrepreneurial skills. And we have a very unique nationwide survey tool called Artists Thrive. So similarly, in education, we support grantees leading early literacy educational reform that will benefit all students, all learners, but especially the 1 in 5 kids with learning differences. And finally, our most recent environmental focus has been support for the community-driven sustainability and resiliency measures and innovations. This has been more place-based focus, and we've tried to say we support the nonprofit Sustainable Connecticut and their community match fund. And we've tried to point out that there have been residents in Madison and Guilford who have applied for and received money from the community match fund. And all the youth that have raised issues through postcards and letters about their environmental passions, we would actually encourage them to get more deeply involved with the Community Match Fund. There are an amazing amount of youth-led models for environmental action under the Community Match Fund. And just also to clear up some, I think, just misinformation for those people who have looked at our 990s and felt like you couldn't get a story of what we funded. What you saw in the 990s was a range of board recommended grants. This kind of grant making is very common in family foundations. It enables individual board members to recommend for grants through the foundation, nonprofits that match their individual passions and philanthropic causes. This represents about 500,000 annually, and then the main story going back to the 3 million, basically that goes to our 3 strategic program areas. So that is a little bit of the clarification on the story. We're becoming more place-based at 6 Opening Hill Road. And we've tried to note that there's going to be this shift to a more hybrid foundation that makes grants and develops its own programming at 6 Opening Hill Road. We're not doing that yet. So we are on a journey, but that is part of the shift to becoming a hybrid kind of operating foundation. Again, all of these are going to be mission-based activities that align with what we do. We're tax exempt, grant making, and as we become more place-based, we will absolutely consider grants to the town and local nonprofits. And we anticipate that these will more than offset any taxes that a private resident would pay. And I should note that we are currently paying taxes. I know at the last hearing, someone was saying that the check that they signed for their most recent set of taxes, and I signed and sent ours in as well. So, but I wanted to underscore that, you know, we have said if the town of Madison wants to enact a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes program, we would absolutely consider being a part of that. There was also some clarifications I need to offer about the Shoreline Arts Alliance. Our grants to them have been purely aligned with the foundation's strategic program area in the arts. In 2020 and 2021, at the height of the pandemic, long before 6 Opening Hill Road was on our radar screen, we made 2 grants to Shoreline Arts Alliance totaling $40,000, and that was for them to take what was a very innovative model about arts venues reopening, like through the pandemic, how to do that to national audiences. You have a shining example of some real innovation there, and we helped try to amplify that. And then in 2024, we did make another grant of $15,000, and that was to support the Shoreline's Leadership Development Program. It's an amazing program. It's an internship for high school and college students who are interested in nonprofit arts administration. That's one of our quirky niches, right? And so this is just a strategic fit for us. And we learned more about what was happening, and we have supported that. So these grants have had no connection to this PZC process. And, we're sorry for anyone who has tried to claim differently. All right, I know I've spent some time addressing some issues that aren't exactly relevant, but the reputation of the foundation has just come into question so many times during this process. We felt it was important for you to know who is standing before you. And are there any questions related to our history or our exempt status before I kind of continue here? I don't see any online. Good in the room?
Good in the room, thank you.
Oh, okay, commissioners, thank you. So, look, this story of 6 Opening Hill Road, it's a 300-year-old story, right? But this modern era in which the foundation is being a part of, the core value we're trying to bring forward is preservation. And we understand that that is an important benefit to the town. We have seen over and over again, there is historical significance to the buildings. It is a unique mix of modernist and colonial architecture. This has been validated by Preservation Connecticut, numerous historians and architects. And today you will see there's been a letter from Jen Schofield, who is the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer and of the National Registry and Architectural Survey Coordinator for the state. She has said this property is eligible. We are working on getting this designation. We hope that we will be able to secure it by 2025. So we'll have state and federal historic designation and protection for this property. Within the architectural and design communities, there will be scholarly and other audiences who want to tour and be inspired by the structures. I'm someone who spent more than a decade in the city of Philadelphia, and I really understand what it was like to go to hallowed grounds, and it can be meaningful whether original artifacts are there or not. Some of the houses I toured and mansions in Philadelphia, sometimes they only had the remnants of walls remaining, right? So the fact that the Tremaine Art Collection is no longer in view is really irrelevant as to the historical significance of the building and the overall experience.
Be respectful, and if we get an outbreak like that, I'm going to have to ask you to leave because we can't hear the applicant. And she's waded through many, many hours of your comments and contributions. So the least you could do is show some respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And I also just wanted to say that the barn preservation in the time of Emily and Barton in those 50s, it was the quintessential American architectural form that was becoming lost. Like barns all over Connecticut and the Northeast were becoming dilapidated and things like that. So the Tremaines found a way to unite a preservation of a tradition of the barn and craftsmanship with modernist design. And I will just say that the foundation has never said this site is like a reenactment site. It's the spirit of what drove Emily and Burton to collect post-World War II contemporary art. That's what's being carried through the proposed uses for exhibitions, for lectures, for gatherings, that will highlight emerging curators and designers and artists. That's what they did at that time. They were celebrating what was coming through the artist. Even in our digital archive, the Tremaine collection, we have two of the most renowned art dealers of our time in the country, Larry Gagosian and Arnie Glimcher, in interviews, just singing the praises of the Tremaines as art collectors who collected for the love of art and artists. And really, I encourage anyone who's been casting aspersions at Emily Hall Tremaine to dig deeper into her complex past. We make available her biography online, plus the book Painting Towards Architecture, which really tells the story of Emily's curatorial and collecting skills at the intersection of art and design. The Emily that the foundation has known, that the family has known, has come to support this element of her, especially in its signature Emily Hall Tremaine Exhibition Award. We understand what Emily was seeing in early contemporary art, how she was moved by what was coming through the artist, including support for numerous artists of Jewish descent, Martha Rothko, Barnett Newman, Louise Nevelson, Sonia Delaunay, Sol LeWitt, and Roy Lichtenstein, to name a few. I'm going to read a quick excerpt. It's from a JSTOR article, and it's about post-World War II art. JSTOR is this online nonprofit digital library. It represents 12 million journal articles, books, images, in 75 disciplines. Here's what they say. They say, in the mid-20th century, this is when this collection was coming together, modern art and design represented the liberalism, individualism, dynamic activity, and creative risk possible in a free society. Jackson Pollock's gestural style, which the Tremaines collected, for instance, drew an effective counterpoint to Nazi and then Soviet oppression. Modernism, in fact, became a weapon of the Cold War. Both the State Department and the CIA supported exhibitions of American art all over the world. In the battle for hearts and minds, modern art was particularly effective. J. Hay Whitney, who was a past president of MoMA and a member of the Whitney family, which founded the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York, explained that art stood out as a line of national defense because it could educate, inspire, strengthen the hearts and wills of free men. This is actually what Emily saw and felt. So the walls and the landscape of 6 Opening Hill Road are integral to this story. Again, you don't always have to see original artifacts. Going and experiencing this involves imagination and inspiration of the place where significant events took place. And today we have the technical ability through virtual reality to integrate enhanced experience. So visitors will actually be able to have some experience of what it was like to see what was on the walls and in the landscape, all while we're trying to advance the mission-driven work in backing young and emerging artists. Really, those who are defying conventional notions of art, holding up art as a way to advance social discourse. And there may be opportunities with the Wadsworth. They hold some pieces of the Tremaine collection now for those pieces on paper and other mediums to be able to come over and be shown and studied at 6 Opening Hill Road. We think these cultural stories and assets are another benefit that this will impart into the town. And I just want to say also that history beckons us to lift up and make visible complexities and contradictions, right? It invites us to learn and reconcile, and if you ask me, to heal and to transform. So we have stated numerous times, Philip Johnson's fascist, anti-Semitic, white supremacist views and actions were and are indefensible. There's no place for these values or positions within the mission-based work of the foundation. but we believe this past must be included in any accurate history of Johnson's life, his architectural contributions, including the design work he did for the Tremaines in the 50s. As a philanthropic institution, we seek to learn from history as we seek to fund innovative projects that advance solutions to basic and enduring problems. I know the Johnson Study Group was noted in some of the letters that were submitted. I want to go back to a 2020 letter that's just a critical piece from the Johnson Study Group. They wrote to MoMA, Harvard Graduate School, and others their demands for Johnson's name to be stricken from buildings and projects. Here's what that letter actually says. As architects, designers, educators, and artists, we call on the Museum of Modern Art, Harvard Graduate School of Design, and all other public-facing nonprofits in the United States to remove the name of Philip Johnson from every leadership title, public space, and honorific of any form. Johnson's widely documented white supremacist views and activities make him an inappropriate namesake within any educational or cultural institution that purports to serve a wide public. The demand for removal relates specifically to the role that naming plays in public institutions. There is a role for Johnson's architectural work in archives and historic preservation. However, naming titles and spaces inevitably suggests that the honoree is a model for curators, administrators, students, and others who participate in these institutions. As the foundation has shared, there will be no Philip Johnson naming, no titles, no honoring of any sort related to the structures at 6 Opening Hill Road. We are following that spirit, that any recognition is related to archival work and historic preservation. So here we stand today, rightful owners of 6 Opening Hill Road, rescued this set of structures from foreclosure, ready to commit upwards of $6 million or more to restore and ready this for neighborhood scale, educational, and philanthropic uses. We did not come before this body to ask for some rezoning to pursue these uses. We came as an applicant because these uses are contemplated and codified in Madison's planning and zoning regulations. I know you know this, but it states that philanthropic, educational, recreational, religious use, excluding correctional institutions and institutions for the support of persons with mental disabilities, are permitted by special exception only, pursuant to all the submittals that we have gone through and everything we're trying to pursue with the conditions around the proposed uses. And we have tried to carefully craft the uses through the guide rails of what we could do as of right. So as of right, we could operate a B&B, a bed and breakfast. And we carefully use that to kind of say, how would we look at our envisioned residencies through that lens in terms of the scale, number, things like that. We understand that as an owner, you have, as of right, you can let rooms to 2 people. So we use that to kind of guide the number of experienced guests that we would invite at any one time. And we have the ability to operate a daycare or a group home, and that guided some of our thinking around hours of operation, numbers of people, and things like that. And instead of currently pursuing any of these as of right uses, we're trying to create something richer, more comprehensive, and more protective for visitors and mission-based leaders that's wrapped in this annual operating plan, right? So you have asked us to clarify what an annual operating plan might look like, and I am going to share my screen to do that. Can you see the slide?
Yes, we can.
Is it appropriate scale on your side?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So here we go. I'm not going to go through, it's a year-long programmed out, and this is what our annual operating plan would look like. This is the summary page. And really what we're showing here, and this would be pretty typical of what we would be doing. 62 program days of meetings, gatherings, and events. That's 17% of the year. 150 days for program residencies, 41% of the year, and 12 days for experienced guests, approximately 3%. I outlined sort of this summary, how many meetings I'm proposing in each month, how many gatherings. I'm going to get to a real calendar in a minute, but you have this in front of you. It's a handout, so you can follow along there or ask any detailed questions as we go along. I just did sort of a visual tracking. We'd have meetings likely in every month, gatherings also, residencies, not year-round, events, only 3 a year, and experienced guest, also not as heavy of a use. I'm going to give you examples as we go through this, but I know you've asked for more of a descriptor of what it means to have meetings of 12 people or less. We're going to meet with grantees, our professional service providers, small roundtables in our program areas, nonprofit leaders, things like that. Gatherings, we're going to do workshops related to our program areas. I'm going to show you some science of reading training, some art and design workshops, some really cool speakers and think tank groups. Would love to have Addison Kelly, Richard Kelly's daughter, the lighting designer, just of significant note for this country. She is as well in her own right. Come and do a lighting design like symposium for us, things like that. And then, you know, the 150, up to 150 people, no more than 4 times a year. We might have a symposium of 75 people exploring the role of artificial intelligence and learning differences. That is a conversation I'm actually having with Stanford University right now, co-hosting events with groups like the Yale School of Forestry regarding climate finance issues, and perhaps a foundation hosted fundraiser. So the residencies, they might look like this, right? I really tried to paint as detailed a picture as possible. A residency called Painting Towards Architecture that would really honor Emily's intersection of the design world and the art world. It might be a 3-month residency where we have a mix of artists and architects in residency. We might do a 1-month residency for arts administrators. That's not really being done in the country, and I think we could really have an impact there. And we might have a residency, another 1 month on design thinking. An experienced guest, really, these are the no more than 2 people at one time who can come. And again, the revenue from this is part of the ancillary revenue that would support our mission-driven work. So might be a couple who loves modernist design, stays for a long weekend, or partners in an architectural firm come for the same reason. Or we have nonprofit leaders just come for contemplative practices in a beautiful space. So again, I'm not going to take you through absolutely every entry in every month, but I want to point out again, we are a small staff, right? We mostly work remotely. In this month of January, we typically only have 1 staff in our office 1 time a week. So that's just like staff on site. In January, we might have a meeting, up to 12 people. I said 5 people here for a grantee meeting. We might meet in this other week with Haskins Laboratory, who works on neuroscience and literacy, 11 people. I'm giving you times, 10 to 1, 10 to 3. And then we might have this gathering, right? That's the up to 25 people. And it might be around the science of reading trainings. It would be educators and leaders from a specific school district. They'll come from 9 to 4. We'll use our shuttle operation that we've talked about. And these are folks who are staying. They are lodging overnight. We are not feeding them 3 meals a day. They are likely dining out in Madison for dinner. And we are doing the catering during the day. So there's economic development happening here. Okay, so again, just in February, it might look, maybe we might have 3 different gatherings. 1 that's an art and design panel, 1 that is this lighting speaker, and we might have some more meetings with grantees, again, like a 10 to 12 meeting. something like that. Then I show here that in March, we might start a 3-month residency. 4 artists, 2 architects, and 2 program staff. So they'll be in residency all the way through, and you'll see much less happening there. We might have our board meeting, which we always have in March, typically this first weekend. So we'll have our board meeting, and that counts as 2 days, 2 gatherings, but not a lot else. Same thing, then this residency continues. We might have 1 gathering, maybe it's a stormwater management panel of scientists, policy specialists, and guests. They're going to be coming for the day, probably, also using the shuttle operation. And again, we might have at the end of this residency, maybe 2 days of an exhibition. And I want to say here, like, we have never tried to be exclusive of the community. The first change we made in our statement of views was that it wouldn't be open to the general public because the neighbors insisted and asked us not to do that. They suggested having it be application only, or pre-sign up only, or something along those lines. And we said, that's a good idea, but that doesn't mean we can't have times that neighbors specifically could come or community members would come. It doesn't mean we couldn't hold spaces in the application process for the neighbors. So we have never meant to be exclusive in what might happen and what your access might be. So in June could be a popular month. I show more activity on the gatherings. I'm showing experienced guests coming for 2 long weekends in the month of June. And I'm showing the first event. And this might be our fundraiser for supporting the residencies. I'll just try and keep going a little more quickly. Same thing. We might start a 1-month residency here. That's for the arts administrators. We might have more exhibitions. We might enable our grantee partners to schedule meeting times that are important to them. August, this residency continues. We've got more gatherings, and we've got our second event. That might be an early literacy symposium. 100 people, educators, nonprofit leaders, neuroscientists, 10 to 4. They're coming for the day. I think they're likely staying, either they've come the night before or they're staying this night. And again, they're dining and being part of the economic development engine in Madison, as are the people in residence. If they're there for a month or they're there for 3 months, they're participating in the local economy as well. I continue through September, October. I mean, you can ask me any questions about any of these things. I don't want to take too much time. I put the third event in here. It might be with Yale Environment Lecture. Maybe it's 50 people, and they're on site from 10 to 5, again, using our shuttle operation for all the gatherings, all the events, all of those things. November, December gets light. Maybe there's an experienced guest that wants to have a winter experience here. We've got some things going, and our office is closed between the holiday of Christmas and New Year's. So that is what an annual operating plan might look like. And so I'll pause and see if there's any questions on the calendar.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I don't know whether it was a Freudian slip or you have changed your application again, but you said 4 events.
I said 3. Oh, I'm sorry. Events, 3, only 3
I heard.
events per year.
And 4.
Michelle, actually, I think it would be better if we give the commissioners a chance to ask questions. I do have a question, Michelle. Have you done the calculations of how many people maximum you could have as visitors, one way or the other, per year? Or did you say that maybe?
Per year. I mean, like if we added up all these people, like 25 in this gathering, 25 in that gathering. No, but I could put that together for you very quickly.
That would be helpful. And I also want to add that I heard on NPR tonight that Madison has 3 million visitors to Hammonasset every year, which was a stunning number that I had not heard, and kind of gave me like, okay, what's the maximum, visitorship that we get to our town, and how does it impact us?
Okay,
I'm using that as a sort of benchmark, just because I just learned it today.
that's good. I'll put together the max numbers that this would add up to in the count represented by this calendar. It's a good question.
Any other questions about anyone who's any commissioners who are watching via Zoom, participating via Zoom?
Hi, this is Bob. I have a question, just one at the moment. So the question I have is just on the events. Would those be planned to be held outside or inside?
So a combination, I think 50 people like
Okay.
this, like a Yale sort of lecture would be inside in the barn, theater style seating. I believe the fundraiser, which I think I had in June, could be outside. And I also believe this early literacy symposium, we might have to use area in the sunroom and in the barn to accommodate everybody inside, but kind of a simulcast. So mostly inside, but things I think like June sort of fundraiser could be also outside. And I'm going to get to this, but I'll say it here too. We have taken off the table any notion that there could be a third party outside rental. We are taking that off the table. So all events will be run by the foundation. So this fundraiser would be us organizing and putting it on. There will be no outside third party rentals for weddings, for any other events or anything like that. So we heard loud and clear that was a really big concern. So we wanted to just, we're taking it off the table. We're saying there will be no third party rentals for events like this, all run by the foundation.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Michelle, I have John Morgan here. I have a question. How is this plan monitored?
So this plan, I think this is great because I feel like we're trying to wrap everything we're doing in the highest level of protection that is possible. So in most special exceptions, you would just approve the uses, right? And you would say, okay, here we go. And there would be opportunities for the town enforcement officer to look at what's going on if neighbors complained about anything that was happening. But this is the kind of calendar we would have to submit a year in advance. So before we started doing things in January, we're already submitting this to you, to the PZC. Here is our, and by the way, we don't think we're going to be fully programmed till 2026 or 2027. So just with the interior level of renovation that has to happen. But say at the end of 2025, we submit this to you. This becomes an enforceable annual operating plan. So if we start holding a gathering on a day we haven't said, or we're going over on what we're doing, or we haven't used our shuttle, like the PZC and the town enforcement officer can come back and say that you're not doing this, and you can call us to the table because you have the power to then go back and either impose new conditions or take away uses because you feel like we have somehow violated something we weren't supposed to do because we did not follow this annual operating plan. I don't think you have other levels of protection like that with other uses and special exceptions. This is what Attorney Chris McKeon put into place. It's what happens under the agricultural tourism. And we voluntarily said, we think this is a good idea. We want to preload everything we're going to do, wrap it in this annual operating plan, and there's a new level of protection for everybody.
Regarding the 150-person event, do you do anything like that now? And if so, where do you do it?
Oh, we participate in a lot of big symposiums and we fund a lot of big symposiums, but we haven't really hosted them because we haven't had sort of an arena to do that. But we co-host a lot of them through our funding, through a lot of our grantees. I work with an independent school outside of Philadelphia that specializes in dyslexia learning differences, and they have a symposium every year of about 200 people, but it's not in a venue that's ours.
Can you hear me?
Is it, Aaron, we've closed the public comment and question process, so.
You're in the middle of the rebuttal.
Yeah,
from
so
the
I think it'd be great if you
applicant,
could hold your questions.
Good. Should I continue on?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I think we've also talked about this sort of comparison of uses, like, okay, we're in mission-based ownership, and then there's personal use ownership. And this goes back to the level of protection. So our small gatherings of 13 to 25 people occurring no more than one time per week, right? You at your house could have a book club, a card club, a game day watching party, a dinner party that might be this many people, right? Our large gatherings, you could have a backyard wedding, a holiday gathering, a graduation party. For living quarters, residencies, we could bring our artists, writers, designers, staff, experienced guests. As a private residence, as of right, you could have an extended stay of a relative. You could have an on-site nanny. You could have an exchange student, or you could operate a bed and breakfast in the RU1. And here's the big difference here. The transparency with which we're bringing, the guidelines that we are bringing. If you're just as of right, you can have any of these events that are happening over here, anytime, any frequency. Don't have to tell your neighbors what's happening. This is where parking often spills over onto adjoining streets. And we heard at the last hearing about the prior owner at 6 Opening Hill Road having these kinds of parties, parking up and down Indigo Trail. And there was like no enforcement going on. And there was no recourse really, except maybe from the fire department because of access. So we submit this annual operating plan. All these activities are disclosed in advance. We're doing all the parking beyond the meetings with off-site shuttle service. There's the recourse by the town and the zoning enforcement. And as I just said, you can take action as a PZC to revoke elements of the operating plan and the special exception. So we just wanted to draw a little bit of comparison by as of right and what we're proposing with mission-based wrapped in annual operating plan protections. So there's also been a lot of conversation about, we don't understand why the statement of use keeps changing. And what we've been trying to do from the very beginning is really understand the concerns by the neighborhood. So from visioning this whole application process to our informal planning and zoning commission session, to meetings with neighbors and the attorney, to our adjusted statement of use, we had been modifying it and we've been trying to get better and more refined and more protective and more on point with what will fit this, the scale and tone of the neighborhood. And this was it right in the beginning, this open to the public. We said right away, we'll do what you're asking us to do. Invitation only, application only, some sort of not open to the general public, right? Right away, residents suggested a shuttle operation. We're like, fantastic, we love that idea. We said we'd maintain the existing footprint of the buildings. We'll talk a little bit more about supporting improvements that have to happen, but we're not adding to the buildings. We've said that. And we said we're not going to have access from Indigo Trail. That's all beyond. So we've continued this course of what we're saying. Okay, number of events, we're going to limit them to 3 a year. I really wanted to point out this one, this confusion about this annual operating plan, as if there's some escalation clause, as if we can change our use annually or something. It's just not true. The annual operating plan, right, that you just saw, fits within the number of uses. So the uses are defined by the statement of use. That's the max we can do, right? 3 events, how many gatherings a month, that kind of a thing. So what we said is if we submit an annual operating plan that is under the ceiling, right? We didn't maximize the number of residencies. We didn't maximize the number of gatherings in that calendar I just gave to you. We could, within the year, add 1 meeting, gathering, or event if we're under our numbers. If we're under the ceiling, like say some world-renowned neuroscientist comes along and we're like, this is a rare opportunity. We only have 2 events this year. This is going to be amazing. We're going to add this to the annual operating plan because we're under the specific use for what we're saying, and we're under our overall numbers. So I just wanted to clarify that. Then we've done a lot. We're going to talk about some of these other modifications we've made. And I did want to underscore, we really heard you. So no third-party wedding function rentals, taking that off the table. With that, I really want to turn to Chris right now. He has a lot to add around our uses and a particular exhibit that he wants to submit to you all.
Thank you.
We need to use the microphone.
Can everyone hear Chris?
No, he needs to use the microphone, please.
There's been a request to use it.
Okay. Do my best to use the mic. Today, I submitted a lengthy summary letter of the entire application. I laid out the applicable law. I drew particular attention to some recent cases, and all in an effort to assist you in the task at hand once we close the public hearing tonight and you enter deliberations. I wanted to point out that attached to the letter, which is 17 pages, but the last 7 pages are, I call it Exhibit A. It is a listing. The first section is the listing of the uses that we've now gone through multiple times. It includes the annual operational plan methodology, and it includes the original conditions that we imposed upon our uses in the amended statement of use. The second section lists the conditions and recommendations that came through our expert witnesses, the traffic consultant and the certified planning consultant. They are listed in section 2. We've indicated on the record that we would agree to implement those conditions. So they're there for you to work with and consider as you deliberate. Section 3 are additional conditions that we've agreed to during this special exception process. They include what Michelle just informed you, that as to the events, there will be no third party or outside rental for events. These will be events that are run and sponsored by the foundation. So the concept of anyone renting the spot for a wedding for their daughter or son is off the table. We've indicated repeatedly that there will be no new construction of any buildings. In the operating plan, and this is in direct response to a conversation that occurred right in front of me at one of the hearings about a point person and contact, and how can people in the neighborhood find somebody to talk to about an issue or a concern. So in the annual operating plan, we will identify and provide contact information for the following point persons: the president of the foundation, the accounting manager, and the contracted property manager who will be available 24/7. The final section of Exhibit A are the other possible conditions that you can and really have to consider when you deliberate here. And I'm putting those out there because over the past year, I've collected information from lots of towns, from lots of projects, from lots of other situations where they've had to tackle issues like this, uses like this in residential zones. The first condition being that the natural tree buffer around the perimeter of the property, which is there now, we of course want to maintain. But that ought to be a condition that is maintained and that this property is in fact buffered by the natural landscape that substantially in the way it is now. That actually came up and was made mention of during our trip to ACA, where some of the ACA members were familiar with the property and the rear lawn area and knew that it had this sort of natural protection buffer.
What is that?
ACA is the Advisory Committee on Community Appearance. They are the design review board in the town of Madison, whom we appeared before, and who, by the way, recommended approval of the application because of the preservation aspect of the application. I've added here an exterior lighting condition for your consideration. I spent a lot of time looking at very complicated lighting regulations in numerous other towns. They're difficult, they're unwieldy. I found one that I adapted from the town of Andover zoning regulations. It requires that exterior spotlighting and flood lighting be shielded so that the light source cannot be seen from off-site. It requires outdoor lighting to be dark sky compatible, full cutoff type fixtures, stuff we talk about all the time in lots of applications before your commission. The lighting at the property lines can't exceed 0.2 lumens per square foot. Where that comes from and what that means, I don't know, but it is in place in Andover. Again, I'm putting this in here for your consideration. I will point out that the regulations already do have a general prohibition on any uses in town creating excessive noise or light and flooding into other properties, odor. It's not written very well, so make it a condition. Noise, in the glass house special exception, which I've reviewed repeatedly, they have a noise ordinance. We don't in town, and I think it's largely because our police and fire and enforcement officials don't have the technology to measure sound from off-site, which seems kind of short-sighted. I know they have them in Brantford. I know they have them in surrounding towns. The typical level that I see and have seen is 55 decibels measured at the perimeter of the property lines. And finally, again, I consider this to be redundant and duplicative of what the law and the regulations already allow you to do and already allow the zoning enforcement officer to do. But verbatim, I put in here a provision from the glass house special permit, which indicates that the commission, through the zoning enforcement officer, reserves the right to conduct periodic reviews both on and off site to determine compliance with the terms and conditions of this approval and to amend or revoke said approval upon written notice, should any violations of such terms and conditions so warrant. Now, this is in addition to the yearly trip that the applicant would have to make each year to present its operating plan, which has its own special enforcement mechanism, but so that there is no doubt about whether you have authority to amend or revoke or modify or fine or penalize, all of which are allowable under the law, you have it as a condition that I put in here for you to work with. Again, I've attached Exhibit A really for your use in your deliberation. And I just wanted to point out to you what was in it, where it came from. With that, I will turn it back to Michelle. I think, correct, Michelle?
Correct, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and making that exhibit possible. I mean, it's a great synthesis of the uses and how they've evolved and what else there is to consider. I know you asked me, the commissioner, you asked me to address the sustainability measures and our architect for the master planning through schematic design for the interior renovations will be Roger Ferris and Partners, so Connecticut based. And we sat down with them and here's what we would propose to do on building materials, right? We're going to try and retain, salvage, and repurpose existing architectural site work and things like that. We're going to be low on the toxin scale, low volatile organic compounds in our paints and natural materials. Efficiency, we're going to try and achieve passive house certification, which is not easy in a structure like this. So that will take some doing, but will significantly improve the building envelope. We're going to use high energy efficiency heating and cooling systems, probably a geothermal heat pump. We'll look at renewable energy resources, most likely a ground mount photovoltaic solar system, so as not to look at any marring of the aesthetics of the house itself. We'll do enhanced indoor air quality and thermal comfort, and of course use highly efficient LED lighting and smart controls, so we're reducing our consumption. On the stormwater and wetlands, we'll selectively replant with native wetland species, and that will help filter and absorb stormwater runoff, also increase the biodiversity in that area of the property. We're going to consider new on-site wastewater treatment, help filter and reduce nitrogen levels in the wastewater, and consider rainwater harvesting for reuse and further reduction of just water use and runoff. So that is what we contemplate for sustainability measures. Unless there's any questions here. The place we were going to go next was really dealing with comment.
Michelle, sorry to interrupt, but we have a question left over from Chris's presentation.
Regarding the 55 decibel calculation. So I read what you said. So 55, according to Google, is equivalent of a little bit less than two people talking. If you have 150 guests, though, I understand you're measuring it. How do you get to 55?
I don't know. I mean, I know you measure at the border. That is again a suggested provision. I don't know that we as a town have the means to even implement a measure like that, but it is the number that I know exists in Branford, and it is the number that I know is applicable to the glass house special exception. I'm not saying it's the right number because I don't know enough about that, but I included it because noise is obviously a concern, and it is something we want to avoid having be a problem for others. So it's a suggestion as a way to somehow limit that concern and address that concern. I know that 55 number appears in a lot of places. You can do a simple Google search and you'll find it. I don't know where that magic number comes from. I wish I did, but I don't.
Okay, great. We're actually going to turn back to Chris because we wanted to comment on the property valuation analysis, and Chris is going to address that issue.
Okay, so obviously we have submitted the report and the testimony of Mark Nadeau, who is he's the only experienced licensed certified real estate appraiser to offer evidence in this matter. His qualifications are listed in the final pages of his impact study, and they speak for themselves. Mr. Nato was contacted by a neighbor, as we heard last month, well after he had been communicating with us, and well after he had formulated an opinion that the uses we were proposing were not going to have any impact on surrounding property values. That was not told to you when that was reported, so I'm reporting it to you now. The criticism, which frankly I even heard from some of the commissioners about using schools, and you're not comparing apples to apples. And appraising of real estate is by no means a precision exercise. We probably all know that. But I think saying, oh, using schools or the Mercy Center in a different part of town, you're talking about apples to apples, that misses the entire point of the impact study, which is based on real estate appraisal industry standards. There are a number of items that can affect neighboring property value. They include noise, air pollution, light pollution, incongruous structures, and increased traffic. Those factors, a school contributes way more than our uses could ever produce in those areas. And so using schools is a very good comparison. When you look at actual sales closer to and further from these uses. That's what he did. He didn't cook up numbers. He didn't invent sales. He used actual sales data. We added the Mercy Center in response to this apples to apples argument. But the apples to apples argument really doesn't make sense. And this is the point. As I indicated, there was he used real data. He didn't cook up any or exclude any through some weird calculation. He took the data for all sales. And contrary to the assertions that have been made, all of the schools and the Mercy Center do have neighborhoods near and around them. I don't know where that statement comes from, but in any event, one of the other criticisms had to do with the fact that the impact study is not dealing with the introduction of a use to an already existing neighborhood. Okay. And I'm not sure that's a relevant or an appropriate argument, but ironically, there is a study that did deal with the introduction of not-for-profit and charitable type uses being put into a residential neighborhood. But that, of course, was criticized and shot down by the opposition as well. And that is the Indiana study that was put before the Economic Development Commission. And rather than speculate about it and convince you or anyone else that you ought to rely on it, I thought I would submit a copy for your consideration during deliberations. And you can make your decisions up, your mind up for yourself about whether this will have an impact on the ballot. So I'm going to hand this to Ms. Mannix so that it can be made part of the record. And then the last point I wanted to make, and Attorney Pellegrino had mentioned that there was a real estate broker who wrote a letter opposing the application, and I found the letter I believe he was referring to from Kathy Lynch, a realtor in town, somebody I respect and work with all the time, and I can only wonder what or how she was brought to write a letter like this, because it seems somewhat out of character for her. But be that as it may, she clearly stopped short. She clearly stopped short of what we would like her to say, which is, she says it could potentially hurt property values. That means speculation. She doesn't know. She doesn't know. And this letter was written on July 31st. And congratulations to Kathy, who's an excellent agent. 2 days later, I'm looking at Instagram and I see that 58 Indigo Trail sold under contract And it states in the post, lots of demand for this. Now, I will say to you, I'm not a real estate valuation expert. I don't know what property values are on any given piece of property at any given time. But I will say this. The pendency of this proceeding and it being in the public eye, it will never be more in the public eye than it has been. With signs on the road, full page ads in the paper, social media blitz. Everybody knows about this particular application and the obvious neighborhood opposition to it. So I submit to you that, is it really affecting values? I don't think so. People are buying homes. So I'm going to submit this Instagram post as well for the record. I think I'm going to ask Michelle to complete before she hands it back to me to offer my closing remarks.
Yeah, okay, Chris. Yeah, you know, just a quick note on that Indiana study. At a very high level, it looked at educational and arts and cultural uses in residential neighborhoods and social service types of activities and uses. And overall, right, not in absolutely every example, but in most instances, if it was an educational use, it sometimes even increased property values. Arts, education, arts, culture, and education together was found to be neutral or sometimes increasing property values. And the social services tended to decrease property values. So we submit that we are in the arts and culture and educational space, and therefore we would anticipate, as Mark has shown, that there would be neutral at the very bottom, just a neutral impact, no impact on property values. So, and you know, I wanted to add this notion. I was really struck by last hearing when somebody said that the existing uses there, like the school and the church, like serve the community. I just thought that was very interesting. I think there was an implication that our uses would not serve the community, but the country school is a private school. It's serving a very exclusive community that can actually afford the tuition. It's not designed to serve just Madison. People are dropping off their kids up and down that road who are clearly live outside of Madison. The church, Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they serve a distinct population. Again, not entirely meant to serve just Madison community. And Mercy by the Sea, or the Mercy Center, has an even broader, you know, contemplative, spiritual set of activities that it's in doing. And they have on-site accommodations, lodging and meals for up to 54 guests at any one time. So as we've shown in our draft calendar, like, we're going to serve local and national audiences. We're going to have an opportunity for distinct nonprofit leaders to have the quiet use and enjoyment of the property. I submit to you that the field on the whole nonprofit sector needs additional spaces for day retreats, special meetings, places where leaders can step outside of everyday life and into peaceful settings to visualize, strategize, reach new levels of transformative insights. We are highly attuned as a foundation to the supportive conditions that will enhance this level of mission-driven support for leaders and practices. And we do believe we will be serving the community and beyond. So I just wanted to add that note to the uses that have been put forth as examples. At this point, we do want to bring back Dave Sullivan from SLR to really talk about traffic safety and related issues there. So, hey, Dave, I see you there. Over to you.
Hey, Michelle, thank you very much. May I share my screen?
You go.
Yes.
Okay. Let's get this out of the way. And for the record, my name is David Sullivan. I'm with SLR. A letter was submitted today, which is up on the screen, and it basically addresses four particular comments. I know there's been a lot of discussion from the public, and there was also the PowerPoint provided by the attorney last meeting. So we have a couple of points from the general comments and a couple that we took out of the PowerPoint, and I'd like to just go through those quickly. One had to do with the guide rail. There was some discussion that while the guide rail may be a nice idea, that it would just serve to reduce the width even further. I just wanted to explain a little bit about how this guide rail does get mounted. This is not particularly useful, but if you think of the barriers as these darker black lines, the guide rails attach to the end of them and go out from there. So the intention isn't to protect the inside of the barriers. The intention is that when you're driving down the road, you don't hit the blunt end of the barrier, because that's where the real danger is, and can cause significant damage. So with that being said, I'll just go to this. These are some engineering drawings that our structural engineers had prepared. I'm just going to point to this one here because I think this might give us the best ability to understand what's happening. So if this larger square were the barrier, the concrete abutments that are out there today, this would be the guide rail, which as you approach it. So if I was traveling westbound, I would hit this guide rail first. This is the total width of the guide rail. Where it mounts to the barrier is just this short section here, and the width of this piece of guide rail is less than 3.5 inches. So you have one of these on either side of, because there's a barrier on each side or an abutment on each side. So the reduction in the width is less than 7 inches. It's between 6 and 7 inches, and we'd ultimately be left with still in excess of 20-foot width of that bridge. So I thought that was important to clarify that we're not significantly reducing the width. The second thing has to do with the routing. Now, this was an interesting comment that I heard, and it was that I think it was put as, why can't we make everyone go to and from Guilford and not go take a right or out or a left in coming from Madison? And the more I thought about it is when we did some of our preliminary routings, we found that there would be a propensity coming from Guilford just because of the way the road system is set up. So we did a deeper dive on that. And let me show you what we found, which is interesting. So these are routings from where most of the people would be coming from. Of course, it wouldn't include somebody that, for instance, lives in North Madison that is on the staff, for example. They would certainly come down from the north. But if you're coming from I-95 to or from the east, if you're coming I-95 to or from the west, if you're coming from Beach Hotel, if you're coming from the commuter lot, if you're coming from Madison Center, all of the routings from Google Maps, from any of the mapping softwares, sends you through Guilford up Norton Town Road to the site at this location. So in fact, we think it's going to be a natural occurrence for that to happen, that most of the vehicles will be coming to and from the Guilford direction. However, we could also further reinforce that. For example, in any of the instructions or reservations or things like that, it could be spelled out that these are the directions, and you should come in this particular if you're driving. And the other thing that could be done is a sign be put at the exit, giving people some directions. So, for instance, if you want to go to Route 1 or I-95 in either direction, take a left. So that I thought was kind of confirmed what I had thought, that most of the traffic will naturally go to and from the Guilford direction. The third comment, and this came from the PowerPoint, I believe, and I couldn't really follow the math, but I think the comment was that there'll be 10,000 trips a year to this facility. So I wasn't able to verify or validate that number, but I just thought it was important to put some perspective on what 10,000 trips a year really means. First of all, as you may know, having heard traffic studies in the past, we don't look at annual trips as a measure to determine impact. In fact, we don't even look at all day traffic. We look at peak hour traffic of a facility. And in this particular case, we're very conservative, assuming the activities, if they when they would occur, that they stacked upon each other and they stacked upon the commuter peak hours. And we still found virtually no impact to level of service and very good levels of service. That's to the side, though. The second, probably more important thing is to really put in perspective what 10,000 trips are, since it sounds like a really big number. 2 or 3 single family homes would generate 10,000 trips a year. So, even the number of 10,000 that was generated is not more than 2 or 3 homes would generate in a year. Another example would be if you look at the average daily traffic on Opening Hill Road. If you did the math, there's 350 vehicles that'll pass the site. So while 10,000 seems like a large number as it was developed, when you annualize anything in this fashion, it sounds like a large number, and it's really a small number compared to some of the comparisons I just made. The last thing, and I think this may be the most important thing, this has to do with the vehicle turning maneuvers. I did look at the ones that were in the PowerPoint, and we did our own, and I'd like to go through those with you. Okay, so this first one, this is a single unit vehicle. So this would be like a box truck. And these would be the trucks that, if you're getting a refrigerator delivered to your house or furniture delivered, in this case, maybe they're bringing tents or supplies or something like that. This shows them entering and exiting from both directions into that gravel driveway area. And and this right side shows them exiting. And the important thing is they are fully within the driveway, which I'll speak about in a second, but the fire marshal asked us to widen that to 20 feet. And this is entering, so no encroachment over the center lines, which is really what we want to make sure is not happening. So those are the single unit box trucks, which can easily make that maneuver. The second one shows what we call the Sprinter van. These are the FedEx and Amazon type vehicles, and these would be going to the front. So what we're showing here is on the left, this is a truck coming in, a Sprinter van, I should say, coming in by a right turn and exiting via right turn. And this shows the opposite movement. If it's coming from Madison, it would take a left turn in, and it was continuing on its way towards Guilford, taking a left turn out. So those were the Sprinter vans. The next thing we looked at here, this is the limousines or shuttle buses. And I think I should probably zoom into the corner here a little bit. We got these statistics from an actual limousine place, and this is a 22 passenger limousine. This was a little bit larger than the 20, but they have even larger ones, which would not be used here because they wouldn't be appropriate based on some of the conditions. But these are basically built on a Ford F450 chassis to give you some idea of the size of them. And so we recreated this vehicle and did some vehicle turning maneuvers. And you can see again, if you look at the red hatching, the red hatching shows that the shuttle bus could enter, circulate, and do their pickup drop off, and again, be on their way. We're only showing it to and from the Guilford direction because most of the origins or destinations of these vans will lead them that way, but they'll also be directed by the foundation to come in and exit in that direction. The last one is the fire truck. So Mike Ott, who you'll hear from momentarily, but he had conversed with the fire marshal. He also had a conversation with the Guilford fire department. I'm not sure if it was the fire marshal there or not, but anyway, what came out of those conversations is first that the width of the gravel driveway should be a little wider. So we widened it out to 20 feet. And secondly, there should be an area at the end so his emergency vehicle could turn around and exit. This is a visual of the truck that we were asked to analyze. So the fire marshal gave us all of these statistics, which we put into our model. This is one of two size pumper trucks that the town has. This is the larger of the two. Excuse me, it's 32 feet long. And he said, I want to be able to get in the gravel driveway. And since it's longer than 150 feet, I need to be able to turn around at the end. And I want to be able to get into the driveway in the front, the circular driveway. So what we demonstrate here is that, yes, it can be done. And we show them entering, turning around and coming back out. This is if they're oriented to the volunteer fire department to the north. And this is likewise showing them coming in and returning in that direction. And then we said, well, what if they're coming from one of the other firehouses, which may come through Guilford roads, or in fact, maybe Guilford is helping out for some particular reason. So we showed the same pumper truck being able to take a right turn into the 20-foot driveway, take a left out, and of course it would turn around the same as in the prior graphic. And this is showing them coming in, circulating to the front of the building, and then coming out, returning towards Guilford. So that's a summary of all of the follow-up information we had. Be happy to answer any questions, or I'll just turn it back over to Michelle. Thank you.
Any questions from commissioners? We're going to hold your questions, okay? This is a rebuttal for us to hear in response to everything that you all have said. Any commissioners on Zoom? Any questions? Okay, I think we're good.
Then I'm really just gonna hand it over to Mike Ott, our civil engineer.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. Just for the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summer Hill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors here in Madison at 60 Wall Street. Just to clarify what Dave Sullivan had said. I did, in addition to reaching out to the town's fire marshal and asking him to consult with the downtown and North Madison chiefs regarding this proposal. I also had a conversation with the assistant fire chief in Guilford, Mike Shove, who was familiar with the project, but I explained it to him and spoke to him about their role in responding under mutual aid and code requirements for this particular site, and had the same conversation with the town's fire marshal. So I'm going to speak just really briefly about a couple of specific comments regarding the septic system that we've designed to serve the two buildings on the site and the existing well that currently and will in the future provide potable water to both buildings. So may I share my screen? I think I might be able to. You seem to be having a problem sharing. Bear with me 1 second.
You go, Mike.
You can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So this is the revised site plan. That was, I should back up. In addition to speaking about the septic system and the well, and this will be very brief, I also just wanted to show the commission and the public the revised site plan that we did in response to the downtown and North Madison fire chief and the fire marshal's comments. And I'll zoom in a little bit here. And although Dave Sullivan showed this driveway and parking area, this might be a little clearer because it doesn't have the vehicle tracking paths on it. So this is the alignment of the existing gravel driveway that's there today. And it's been widened again at the request of the fire marshal to 20 feet. And that request is in order to meet a certain fire safety code for the uses of these buildings. This is the 12-spot parking area that we've showed the commission previously, and this T at the end is the turnaround. So please feel free to stop me if the commission has any questions while I'm talking. So that's the revision to the site plan. I guess I should also point out, and I may have neglected to do this last time. You'll see there's a call out here for the temporary portalet area. This is where it's planned to temporarily set up the portalets during events, the large events that will happen or can happen up to 3 times a year at the property. So I'm gonna see if I can switch drawings here. Hopefully the commission will be able to see the switch without me coming back out of. Can the commission see the change in the plan?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is the same base mapping, but this is the septic system that we've designed. There's 3 sheets here. This is sheet 1 of 3, and it depicts the proposed septic system that will serve both buildings. So I believe I went over the septic system previously, but I wanted to specifically respond or at least clarify and make sure the commission has the facts about the septic system. So the septic system is, all engineers have to design it in accordance with the requirements of the Connecticut Public Health Code. And the town health department has to review it. And in this case, the state health department also will review it. The system is not unusual in size. It was designed to serve both buildings and their uses, both residential use and office use. There are 4 bedrooms in the main building, and there's There's actually only 2 official bedrooms in the accessory building, but we designed the system as if there were 3. Because there is a room in the accessory building that may, under the public health code, when it's reviewed by the town, be considered a bedroom, given the public health code's definition of a bedroom. So the system is designed for 7 residential bedrooms and a 4-person office. That's the design basis of the system. The system, I believe I heard these comments that I'm about to repeat correctly, but I believe I heard at previous meetings the system described as massive, and I believe that was the word that was used. And I also heard some comments that seem to imply that it was very close to the Neck River. So I just want to make sure the commission, understands and has the facts. And we laid this out in the letter, the response letter that we submitted. I think Attorney McCann submitted today. The leaching field component of this septic system, which is this long single row, is 144 feet in length. That's not an unusual length. In fact, as a comparison, I looked at some of the septic systems in the Indigo Woods subdivision to the east. And I looked at, in particular, the 3 lots that were closest to the Neck River. And I'm not picking on anyone here, and there's nothing wrong with the septic system that I chose to look at. It's all standard of practice. But by comparison, the septic system for 48 Indigo Trail is 140 feet long. So the leaching field component. So our leaching field is 4 feet longer than the leaching field for 48 Indigo Trail. And the comment about our septic system being too close to the Neck River, and I think I'd like to switch screens one more time and make sure I read you the exact numbers. This is the letter we submitted today. So the comment about our system being too close to the Neck River, our leaching field is approximately 155 feet from the inland wetland boundary on the property and 180 feet from the Neck River on the property, on the 6 Opening Hill Road property. And again, as a comparison, and again, there's nothing wrong with this. The system at 48 Indigo Trail meets all the requirements of the public health code, but that system, again, is 140 feet in length, and it is approximately 75 feet from the inland wetland boundary on their property and 105 feet from the Neck River. So again, we are 155 feet from the wetland, and I'm trying to read you the right numbers, 155 feet from the wetland as compared to 75 feet, and we are 180 feet from the Neck River as compared to 105 feet. In practice, nothing wrong with either of the 2 systems. Just wanted to make sure the commission had some perspective on the system we've designed. And then the last thing, very quickly, is there's been some comments about the water supply well and whether one existed. There certainly there have been people, as you know, living in both buildings, and there's certainly a water supply source. We searched the town's records as part of our due diligence, couldn't find any records on the well. We made several inspections of the property and could not see it visually. Not unusual for an older property and an older house. A lot of times they're below grade. Sometimes they're actually located within the building. And sure enough, the owner found a record that seemed to indicate that the well might be within the most westerly addition to the main building. And the owner hired a specialty contractor to do an investigation and confirmed that the well, in fact, is located beneath the floor in that westerly addition. Michelle may know the history and maybe the date of that addition, but it's clearly located within the addition and below the floor. There's, as this letter states, there's very modern water supply well system equipment in the basement. So it was very obvious that there was a well, and we were lucky enough to find it. So I think that's really the extent of what I had to say, and I'll stop sharing, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Thank you, Mr. Ott. Good questions.
Yeah, is the well operational today or no?
Madam Chairman, could you repeat that? I could not hear that question.
Arda is asking if the well is operational now.
Yes, it is. It is operational.
One on Zoom have a question?
I do. I have some questions. I'm
Oh.
sorry I'm sorry my video is not on, but the internet's been cutting out here, so I'm trying to keep the bandwidth narrow. I think I have 3 questions. When you showed the drawing for where the portalets are going to be, they look fairly far from the residence. Do you have an estimate how far they are?
It'd take me a minute. I could open
No, you don't
My-
need to do that.
file, but they're placed purposefully. The events, as you know, will be, my understanding would be out on the lawn. And we push them back a bit, so they're kind of not front and center with the event. If that
Okay.
makes sense.
No, that makes sense. That's how it looked to me, that they're far enough from the home that they'd be meant for outdoors. Does the so before this, the presentation was that most of the events would be held indoors. So next question is the septic system in your building, which seems to be fairly robust, I guess you could say, which is good. Can it handle an 8-hour meeting of 25 people multiple times a year, or is it going to start pushing its capacity? I'm not an expert in this area, so I'm trying to understand.
No, that's a good question. That's a very good question, and I probably should have said that. I should have brought this up. The answer is yes. So septic systems for residential uses are designed solely on the number of bedrooms.
Right.
And it's assumed that there are 2 people per bedroom, 75 gallons per person, so 150 gallons per bedroom. That number has a safety factor in it. It's larger, in other words, than if you were to study water use from residential facilities or residential buildings. And it also contemplates what might happen at a single family residence. And Michelle had a great slide earlier, and I won't be able to remember it all, but she did a great job of explaining, for instance, that a meeting, a 12-person meeting might be the equivalent of a book club. Gatherings, the 13, I think if I have the number right, 13 to 25 people up to once a week maximum, might be the equivalent of a larger get together or a party that might happen at a residence, and that public health code contemplates that kind of periodic water use. So the answer to your, that was a long-winded answer, but the answer is yes. I guess, I should also say, I should make sure I say, the septic system, of course, is not designed for the 150 person events. That would not make sense. It's only limited to 3 times a year. And that's why the temporary toilet facilities. Now, unless the commission has any additional questions, I think I would turn it back to Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Ott.
Madam Chair, I couldn't quite see the plan. Could you ask the engineer if he shows the guardrails being installed? I couldn't see the bridge.
I think the question was, we don't, I can answer. we do not show the installation of proposed guide rail on our site plan. That's a recommendation that's been made by our consulting traffic engineer, and the commission certainly could condition that we add that information to what is the official site plan for the proposed improvements for the site. We could certainly do that.
The follow-up question is, would that require an approval of the Inland Wetlands Commission, since it would be in the upland review area?
No, typically not. And I say that as the town's former director of public works and town engineer. No, that would be considered a routine maintenance. It really just involves driving posts. You all have probably driven by and seen it happen. It involves driving vertical posts and bolting the rail system to both the posts and to the concrete parapet. So there's really no potential adverse impact to inland wetlands, and no need for a permit.
Michelle, back to you.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. I will say the additions that happened to the house, the modernist additions, were all basically in the 1950s, answering that question. I want to shout out to my Madison working group who went through the calendar and added up all of the visitors. So in that illustration that we showed you earlier, it would be 1,028 visitors over the year, with 47 staff days. And again, that's an example kind of pushing sort of the upper limits of what that might look like. So I wanted to go back to that. And I just also would just want to say, like, the road itself, I mean, we're happy to be part of an advocacy team who uses the SLR study to, work with Madison and Guilford to come up with improvements to the road that make it safer for everybody. We know it's a big concern for everybody, as you've stated in many ways. I'm gonna go back and share my screen again. I just, this part, I feel like we need to address this from the foundation's point of view. It's not necessarily my style to be a little adversarial myself, but you have faced such a chorus of opposition opinion, but like 150 people reciting, signing, publishing sort of the same erroneous claims that this is a circus, that this is going to be a commercial center, it's an event venue, it's a money-making operation. That just does not make it correct. In fact, it has built, from our perspective, an atmosphere of like fake news. And I want to go back and just talk about 3 of the sort of petitions. The one from the physicians just citing how many people they've treated from pedestrian and bicycle injuries. And we're sorry this experience happens on this road, but I mean, it's just sort of a wrongful claim that our use is going to exacerbate this. None of these incidents were caused by anything that's happened on the site now. And according to Dave and the SLR traffic data analysis, we're not going to exacerbate these uses. And according to what Dave said about, 10,000 vehicle trips a year, and I think it was Mr. Lockhart himself who said, I'd rather see this property be subdivided into 2 or 3 large homes, which would generate as much or more traffic at that per year, which isn't even the value that traffic engineers use. But if we're using it as a comparison, 10,000 trips a year, if you had 2 or 3 homes on this 6-acre property, it would be this equivalent number of trips. So I just would the physicians sign this statement if this were going to be 2 or 3 houses instead of what we're doing? We're just trying to have some clearer perspectives here. This was a publication, it was an ad, and all my arrows are just points of proclamation that are just not accurate. There's no guise of art and philanthropy happening. There's no increase in noise. We've just talked about that. We just talked about the traffic concerns. We just talked about this criticism that it's by invitation only, as if it's a criticism and not something the neighbors actually wanted. We said we would put in a vetting process for the residencies. The disruption of wildlife and habitats, I don't know where this comes from. I don't understand the claims. We just showed you our sustainability measures. We just talked about the economic development benefits, and the relationship between Philip Johnson and Emily Hall Tremaine was as their architect, and they knew each other from the art world. So these are just exaggerated claims that we feel really amount to some level of propaganda. The petition that, how many people signed, I'm not sure what project this is. I think, Chris and I have said if this petition were put in front of us, we might sign it too, but there's no retail store. We took that out a long time ago, any notion of that. It's not an event venue. We're not going to have light pollution. We're not having this temporary signage visible for 4 weeks at a time. We're not having parking capacity for 150 people. We do not have the right to change our use annually. We're not constructing additional structures. We're not creating a road from Indigo Trail, and we're not looking to increase any traffic concerns or disturb wildlife or anything like that. So more than half of this petition is erroneous in its claims. And so, yes, there are a lot of signatures. Yes, we know you have a lot to consider. But we really just wanted to try and bring a little perspective from our end on what is happening. And I know Chris has some other comments to make at this point regarding some specific rebuttal points. So Chris, back to you.
I drafted that petition. That petition was drafted on the original submission that has been modified a dozen times.
Okay, hold your comments, please. This is the chance for the applicant to respond to everything that's happened. Not your chance to rebut again to rebuttal.
Well, she's lying. She's a liar.
Okay, you can put it in writing and send it to us, but this is not the opportunity to have these kinds of conversations. I appreciate it. Thank you.
These are my final comments. I first wanted to address what were the two PowerPoint presentations. One way back on May 16th, first night, and the last one being on August 1st. And obviously, this is the first hearing I've been involved in where there's significant opposition. I sat through lots of people who talk very upset, they're frustrated, they're angry. And a lot of what I heard is fear and concern. And I'm not in any way attacking them. But I expected when counsel for the group of neighbors presented that we would have some actual evidence. And what struck me about both PowerPoints isn't so much what they contain, but what they didn't contain. And that is real evidence and data, an expert opinion as to why you ought not to grant this application. Instead, it contained more of what Michelle was just talking about. It contained catchphrases, fear-mongering, hyperbole, leaps of logic, speculation, and unsupported conclusions. That's what the two PowerPoints did. The catchphrase we've heard over and over again. They're trying to take a mile an inch at a time. First of all, that's not evidence. Second of all, it shows that the lion's share of the basis of the opposition here is based in fear of what may or might or could happen. That means it's speculative by its definition. The case law, not me, but the case law is clear. Speculative information is not sufficient. It's not evidence. Showing a picture of a portable laboratory with a quote, "We've all been there," is not evidence. We're talking about portable laboratories that are going to be there probably less than 48 hours, maybe 3 times a year. People in the neighborhood have had work done on their house and probably have had a porta johny out there longer than we would ever have it. So I don't understand the fascination with showing a picture is not evidence. In the first PowerPoint presentation, there was a citation to the provision in the regulations about display of merchandise, how we were somehow violating it. We're not displaying any merchandise. Listing the general standards to the special exceptions, which are in section 4.4 of the regulations, and putting no next to all 3 of them is not evidence. That is not evidence. Cherry picking the plan of conservation and development and writing no next to certain portions of it. And I haven't ever seen an application before any commission that checks off every box of the plan of conservation and development. Just doesn't happen. But cherry picking the pieces and then asking a crowd of people who are obviously frustrated and angry whether the application supports community pride and spirit, that to me is not evidence. That's grandstand. So despite the attorney's assertions to the contrary, there's no evidence that the well isn't working, although it appears in the PowerPoint. There's no evidence that the septic system is massive, as we just heard, yet it appears in the conclusions of the PowerPoint. Mr. Ott has said the septic system we're proposing is further from the wetlands and further from the Neck River than septic systems in the neighborhood where the opposition comes from. There was also reference made to the 4 parking spaces that are in front of this 300-year-old house as somehow being illegal. Well, they're not illegal. I've had the discussion with staff. I've looked at the regulations related to parking. Nina Peak, who's a certified planner, did a comprehensive review of our regulations, the criteria that has to be considered, the regulations that are applicable, much like you're going to have to do once you deliberate, and has concluded that we comply with the parking. That's evidence. Not one expert from the opposition, other than, I believe, an engineering firm was hired to talk about turning radiuses, which, quite frankly, were received by our traffic engineer, further investigated with the actual fire marshals of the 2 towns, and corrections to the site plan were made that make it better. During the first hearing, Attorney Pellegrino asserted, I believe in response to the assertions that I had made about other alternative uses that this property can be put to. Because whether you like it or not, you have to consider that when you're talking about impact on a neighborhood. What else can be going on there is important. And his response was that the property's undevelopable. There's a river, there's wetlands, you can't develop it. Well, Mr. Ott has looked at the developability of this property, not just for the Tremaines, but for a number of people who were interested in the site before the Tremaines bought it. And make no mistake about it, this 6-acre parcel is developable. There are open space conservation subdivisions in town right now on West property. So these are the considerations. I'm not inventing these. They exist in our town. They have to be considered by you as the commission. Some other rebuttal points. Unfounded and unsubstantiated criticism of the applicant, its experts, anybody who dared to support
the application. And even the commission chair and the commission itself have been attacked during these 4 hearings. Again, it's not evidence, but it happened. We all sat here and we all saw it. Examples, the Madison Economic Development Commission issues a letter of support. What's the response? They're in cahoots with the applicant. They're unethical, they're corrupt, they acted secretly and covertly to harm the neighborhood. That's what you heard, that's what I heard.
And they threatened me verbally.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did, and I have witnesses for that.
We've heard you.
A Madison resident, former chair of the commission, issues a letter of support. What's the response? What's in it for him? Again, that is not evidence. It shouldn't be convincing to you, so don't fall into that trap, because the evidence is all you can consider. The relevant evidence, the facts, the data, the expert opinions. These are tactics, they're not evidence. The special exception, if it's approved, and any and all conditions and limitations associated with it, would be very much enforceable. Michelle touched on this. The annual operating plan requirement is a unique provision of this particular application. We put it forth to alleviate the very concerns of which people are complaining. Another enforcement mechanism. Virtually all zoning enforcement is triggered by neighborhood complaints. Somebody lodges a complaint, it gets investigated by the zoning enforcement officer, and action can be taken. The statutes and regulations provide for clear enforcement measures, including fines, penalties, modification of the permit, and even revocation. And as I indicated before, I've suggested that that condition be added, just so that there's no doubt. There was a lot of suggestion of the approval of this application is going to lead to a flood of philanthropic and educational uses coming into Madison. Everyone in town is going to come and make an application to set up shop so they don't have to pay taxes. Well, I verified that the provision under which we're seeking the special exception has been in the regulation since at least 1992. So if there were going to be a flood of applications, you would think they would have occurred over the past 32 years. But, of course, what may happen down the road puts us in the same bucket I talked about before. It's speculation. Nobody here knows what's going to happen in the future. So that argument is hollow and meaningless, although repeated multiple times. We talked about the restrictions of the Indigo Woods subdivision. I withdrew the strip of land that's within the subdivision out of an abundance of caution, not because I thought it would jeopardize this application, but we don't need the strip for what we're doing, and the restrictive covenants are what they are. The suggestion that the creator of a subdivision, and I've looked at subdivisions for a very long time, many different declarations of restrictive covenants, preventing everything from clotheslines to prohibiting people of certain races from hanging towels over deck balconies, those types of restrictions, in this case, limiting to single-family use, those are designed for the owners of the subdivision themselves to make their community what they want, to adhere to certain rules. I can assure you that Mr. Tremaine was not thinking about his remaining property when he put those restrictions into the subdivision. He was trying to make those lots more valuable based on what those restrictions imposed upon people who brought in the subdivision. What I think may be lost here through all of this is that there are many people who support the application. There are letters on file. The Economic Development Commission supports it. ACA, when we went before them, supported this as a preservation effort. There are people on social media who are bucking the tide of the local neighborhood in declaring this a circus which it's not. I've had numerous discussions with people in town. And if people really care to listen about what the uses are, the Exhibit A, they want to really look and understand that. And when they do, they all seem to have the same reaction. What is the big deal? Why did this get so blown up? Is that all they want to do? That's what I'm hearing. And I'm a citizen of the town too. I'm having conversations with people all the time. I have to address the assertion that I stood here before you and told you that you cannot deny our application. And if I said that, I'm wrong. Okay, thanks for the reminder. Thank you. Thank you. So I want to explain for the record what I mean when I said that. And that is, if you read the letters in opposition, and if you listen to all of the testimony, which I have, you will hear over and over again that anything other than a residence should be denied. There are signs throughout town saying no exceptions to residential zoning. You ought to wholesale deny this. I can't believe you've let this go on this long. You should have summarily denied it. A wholesale rejection of an application like this, if you were to base your decision on a conclusion that these types of things just don't belong in a residential neighborhood, I submit to you that you cannot do that. That ignores your own regulations. And that's what I meant. If I said it differently, then I withdraw it and I stand by what I just told you. Doing for a wholesale rejection or moratorium on any application seeking philanthropic and educational use in a residential zone is not a proper basis to deny this application. They amount to a moratorium. And yes, it is true that you cannot deny it on that basis. The commission is not only obligated to consider the proposed use set forth in our application, but it has to endeavor to address any general concerns, i.e. health, safety, welfare, through conditions and limitations. That's what the statute says you have to do. If the general concerns and conditions can be addressed through appropriate conditions, then the commission has to approve it. The ability of the commission to impose these conditions is not there as a justification to deny a special exception permit, but as a means to approve it. And I've cited in my legal summary letter to you the law in this regard from Judge Fuller's treatise. It's clear. I'm not making it up. In our opinion, there's not one single point of opposition that can't be addressed through a proper and appropriate condition imposed by this commission. And so, in conclusion, I would submit to you that we've met the specific requirements of the regulation under which we seek this application. Our uses are philanthropical and educational, and they're all in accordance with our mission statement. The building in which the uses will occur, the only specific requirement of the regulation, cover 2% of the site. We're allowed to go up to 15% in terms of the specific requirements. We've submitted substantial, uncontroverted, and expert evidence that all of the general standards for granting the special exception uses have been met. The applicant has self-imposed significant limitations and conditions on its proposed uses to satisfy concerns of neighbors and the community, and it remains willing to implement such other reasonable conditions and limitations that you may choose to impose during your deliberations. The simple truth here is that for whatever reason, the neighborhood's perception of what the foundation seeks to do at this site is vastly different from what is actually in front of you tonight. The originally requested uses, and admittedly, they've changed. They've been scaled back. They've been limited. They've been conditioned, modified, even enhanced to make the application better. The site plan has been revised to better accommodate the uses. This is usual and typical of special exception process. And it's indicative that the process actually works. So we submit that the application before you strikes the balance between allowing these requested uses to be carried out, again, with limits and conditions that satisfy you, and protecting the neighboring property owners. The process, although contentious and uncomfortable at times, has shaped, modified, and yes, improved the foundation's proposal so that it now allows you, the commission, to approve it and allow it to move forward at an appropriate scale. With that, I will turn it back over to Michelle, and I thank you for your careful and attention and cooperation over the entire hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And, you know, Chris pointed out Gary Leonard's letter of support, and I just hope as the commission there, that you paid close attention to his letter. I mean, he's a near peer who sat in your chairs and actually chaired the Madison PZZ for many years. He's an accomplished architect. He lives down the road from the Mercy Center. And, you know, taking all of these things into consideration, he put forth a letter of support for this special exception. And I feel like we are providing more assurances than probably any other special exception you've had before this. And if for some reason you're considering, if you consider sort of approval of the special exception, somehow a leap of faith because you are less familiar with the philanthropic and educational uses that we have brought forward, you have the safety net of the annual operating plan. It works for everybody and it is enforceable. And so I say that it's a great safety net for everyone involved. And I've wanted to summarize. I feel like I've peppered throughout the comments, the benefits to the town, but I know this has been important to you all. And I feel like we are bringing multiple benefits: historic preservation, architectural distinction, cultural experiences and assets, historic tourism, economic development, sustainable development practices, and becoming identified as a place where nonprofit leaders are advancing mission-based contributions to policy, to research, systems reforms, and practice innovations. So that's the summary of our benefits to the town. We, on behalf of the board, the entire board, I thank you deeply for listening, and we'd be happy to address any other questions you may have. Otherwise, our comments are complete.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners?
I believe Commissioner Reinhardt had questions. Bob, are you able to connect here?
He's having Wi-Fi trouble.
Yeah, I'm okay. I think I think the question I had was answered while my connection dropped. It was with respect to the capacity of the septic system for 25 people, and then can it handle the 75 or 100 people on a daily event? So, as the engineer was responding to that, everything just dropped on me. So,
thanks, Bob.
Are you looking to have that? It is in the record. Are you looking to
yeah, no, if it's in the record, I'm fine. I'll look it up.
read that? Okay.
I think we've kind of gone through a lot tonight. It's hot. And I would suggest that we consider closing the public hearing. If no further questions.
Do we have any questions at all, ma'am? Miss, no, I don't mean this with no disrespect, but I would like a question on the septic. You got a 1,250 gallon septic tank. Okay, and you got a pool there.
Yes.
How is that getting addressed? How is the pool getting addressed?
Excuse me for just a minute.
Okay.
The public portion ended in the beginning of this, where the applicant had an opportunity to now address the public's questions and have their final closing
Ms. Snow
statement.
said later, after the commission
So I
spoke.
did say
asked
that, and
questions.
actually, given the kind of responses we've had, I'd appreciate it if you would put your questions in writing to us.
Madam Chair, the public hearing needs to close this evening.
Right.
No additional correspondence can be received.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you.
This evening, after the applicant has rested, the commission has an opportunity to address questions, and then the public hearing closes.
So
That is the
Erin's
standard
explaining the process of
the
public
hearing,
hearings. I think
according to Robert's rules.
according to the rules, Attorney McKeon has also, I think, tried to explain to you a little bit more about special exceptions in residential neighborhoods. And I wanted to add to that a little bit that, maybe you all think this is the first time we've ever had a special exception in a residential neighborhood, but there are many, many, many throughout residential, commercial, and light industrial districts in town. I counted what I've seen as chair of the commission, and we've had an average of 6 per year, I think it is. I can double check that based on minutes. So this is not new. And pardon me if I don't have the rules right. We try, we've gone out of our way to accommodate the public, I think. We've had 3 meetings that went on for hours. Your voices have been heard. We've read your letters. And I think it is time for us to close the public hearing and move to deliberations.
Point of order.
Once we close the public hearing, we have 65 days to deliberate and to reach a decision.
I have a point of order, please. Madam Chair.
I think I was pretty clear that this is
I
the
think-
process we're following.
I think you can leave the public hearing open for written testimony so long as you don't go beyond the deadline. And I think you have a week left till the 24th. So it would be permissive for you to permit written questions or responses. We did get a brand new site plan on the night of the public hearing. So leaving the public hearing open for a few days to receive written comments would be permitted. And I think in light of what we just heard, I think you should consider.
I think this is a conversation between the 2 attorneys as well.
It's our application. We get to put our application on the way we want to. We are in an extension period because we granted it. It is not a brand new site plan. And I would suggest that unless the applicant is going to agree to an extension, which we've clearly indicated we want to close the public hearing tonight. And we've sat for the better part of 3 meetings and listened to collect everything we can, to come back and respond. That's the way it works. That's the way we'd like it to conclude. There's no claim whatsoever that people didn't have an opportunity. We filed this application in March.
Thank you. Erin, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think as we've expressed in previous meetings, this process does not go on ad nauseum. The applicant had an opportunity to rebut and provide information based on public comment. That has been done. That does not invite another opportunity for
round.
back and forth. That's not the way the public hearing process works.
Okay, so could I have a motion to close the public hearing? Ruben, second.
Janet.
Mike Rice as well. Any discussion? All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Are you at
I
65 days from today?
That's my.
Okay. Your extension, no extension. So I didn't know.
Okay, I can give a brief update on the time frame, and then just advise everyone that while the public hearing matter is closed, this item is not, the commission is not finished discussing, determining whether they're deliberating this evening, and we have other items. So before everybody gets up and disrupts the meeting, we'll let you know the statutes upon closing of a public hearing. The Planning and Zoning Commission has 65 days to render a decision. There are opportunities for extensions. However, the applicant has exhausted that time frame. So it is 65 days for the commission to make a decision on this application.
Do you publicize when the decision will be made public? So that
The agendas will have when an application is on them, just as each of these do. typically as a courtesy, we'll put something in parentheses to let you know.
Okay.
I recommend checking agendas, and understanding, listening to what the commission is going to be doing next. This happens all in a public meeting.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for your time.
Madam Chair, I guess the decision here would be whether the commission wishes to deliberate on this at all this evening or table deliberations for another night.
So I'd like a motion and that we table for another evening.
I don't think anybody can hear. Our commissioners online and the public cannot hear online with so. Thank you, Chris.
So I would like to make or hear a motion that we schedule deliberations for our next meeting.
Outside, yeah. Gives us time to think
Was
about it.
that, you didn't see a downside? Is that what you, oh, okay, I thought you were asking. I'm sorry.
Or tonight.
I mean, we just received some information this afternoon. And there was a lot to absorb from what we heard tonight. And I think that our next meeting then, Erin, would be not the September 5th, is it the September 12th?
That is the next, well, your next meeting is the September 5th meeting.
So even though we're doing the plan of conservation and development that evening, we could also add this to the.
That's at your discretion, what you prefer.
Maybe some discussion on that, what do you think?
Well, I think you're right, because you got those long documents about 5 o'clock, including case law. That's what we're thinking about for a week or two, and come back fresh on the 5th. So motion to right on the 5th.
Sounds good. Second by Mike Magda. Any further discussion?
Did commissioners hear that?
Yeah, did you all on Zoom
Yes.
hear everything?
Yep.
So we're proposing that the deliberation continue at our September 5th meeting and that we do not deliberate tonight. Okay,
Agreed.
so unless there's further discussion, all in favor, deliberation will begin on September 5th, 2024. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is 24-15-251 Boston Post Road, as well as 24-16 plus the coastal site plan, 251 Boston Post Road, both of which have been withdrawn. And Erin, it would be great if you could bring us.
Yes. The commission did receive a letter of withdrawal for both the zone boundary amendment, which was the master plan modification, and the site plan, the associated site plan application, and coastal site plan application. Because the letter didn't give a whole lot of explanation in it, I just wanted to give you the quick synopsis. The applicant has, as you requested, continued conversations with both local staff, town engineer, town planner, zoning enforcement officer, as well as the state. And that includes DEP as far as wetlands jurisdiction or coastal site plan, and the Department of Transportation as it relates to any work within the state's right-of-way on Boston Post Road. We did have a very successful meeting on site last week. Several representatives from DOT were there, including arborists, their engineers, their permitters, as well as the applicant and their traffic consultant and engineer, Dave Sullivan from SLR. The triangular areas were identified for sight lines with markers on site, and the state did look what that would entail as far as clearing near the Neck River to achieve those sight lines as required for both ingress and egress out of the main Boston Post Road driveway. The arborist did look, there were some opportunities for some selective clearing of some smaller trees, those that do not trigger the requirement to notify the town. I believe that's that 18-inch cutoff. There are a couple trees. One is leaning over towards the post road. A couple others. These are all up on the banks. There's nothing in the water, and those quite a bit are smothered in invasive species, mostly Japanese knotweed. And so the goal is to have the applicant hire a tree company to get permits through DOT for encroachment and do some selective clearing, meaning the cutting of invasives and any underbrush, basically to the level of the guide rail that exists next to the bridge. And a couple trees, they are clearly marked by DOT's arborist. It's my understanding from the meeting that DEEP has not taken any further jurisdiction beyond their original coastal site plan application, which is the same site plan that the Planning and Zoning Commission approved back in the wintertime. So the state has also indicated that they did not see or have a desire to remove the 2 large oak trees within the state right-of-way that are in front of the building now, which is, I think, a huge positive. Those are nice mature trees. The other opportunity, instead of removing trees, is to try and limb up to achieve the sight line. It sort of comes between some trees, just to kind of catch the curve from the east on the post road.
Near the
So
river.
that will, right, so that will, they're allowed to limb up 16 feet on some of those trees to enhance sight line, but not any straight removal or, anything down to 6 inches, things like that were discussed previously in meetings. And that, my understanding from the meeting and speaking with Tracy May from DOT, she said that when that sight line that was measured is achieved to the satisfaction of the state, that would allow for all vehicular access both in and out of that main driveway on the post road, which would eliminate the need for a driveway on Stonewall Lane, just as was originally approved in your master plan. And so that is why the applicant withdrew the application, because they are confident at this point that they can do some limbing up and some removal to the satisfaction of the state, secure their sight lines, and receive encroachment permits for the modifications to the driveway as the commission originally intended. They also noted that the stone wall that was rebuilt and encroached on the state property can remain where it is and does not have to be removed. So those were the big takeaways from this meeting, enough to give the applicant some confidence to withdraw this application.
Great news. And it's good to get everybody together, meeting at once. I think, Erin, that was a huge accomplishment.
It was quite a crew out in our vests out on the post road. So, but it was effective. And so the mystery behind the withdrawal letter is now.
Thanks. We appreciate that.
There's only one word, lovely.
Love.
It made sense.
It makes sense.
It made sense.
We're glad
Way to figure
that there was a way to work it out. All right, so next is 24-26 Overshores Drive East, map 14, lot 9, zone R4, owner Overshores Association, Inc., and Joanna Toya, applicant Race Coastal Engineering, Inc., coastal site plan to replace some or all bulkhead components as needed in beach area. This has been received, and I would appreciate a motion to table it to our September 19th, 2024 meeting. Motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, so that will be on our September 19th meeting. Next, we have approval of minutes. John,
Sure.
Secretary.
July 16th special meeting. Members present: Snow, Reinhardt, Yuza, Bugda, Morgan, Rubin, Downs, O'Connor, and Peckinpah. A motion for approval. Welcome. Second. Any edits or corrections? Just one item. Bob Reinhardt. Your name is misspelled, what I can tell. Or is
Still haven't got it right?
No, I will take full credit for that. I did these minutes And I was convinced that Bob did not have a D, and so I intentionally spelled his name without a D, probably for a year and a half.
I think it's.
I apologize, Bob, and I now stand corrected.
I was confused too, well, because it shows up on the screen without a D also here.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, no.
Part of the same error.
Okay.
Goes back to the origin.
That was a voluminous meeting, nicely summarized, so
Yes.
otherwise,
Yeah.
nice and, succinct. Okay, vote to approve? All in favor? Great. The August 1st regular meeting, members present Downs, Reinhardt, O'Connor, Snow, Rubin, Morgan, Duza, and Bugda. Motion for approval? Second,
I'll
Michael. Any edits or corrections? One item, Andy, you said that you abstained in the vote to continue the public hearing opening Hill Road. So is that, otherwise no corrections. All in favor?
For that correction, great,
Great, thank you.
thank you. Okay, I have no remarks except to say thank you for this long process. And for those of you on Zoom, it's about 80 degrees here. We're all sweating. I hope it's cooler where you are.
Yes, it is.
Even in Florida. We're
Yes.
It is higher here too, I think.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
did want to let you know, we have 2 applications that came in yesterday after the agenda was posted. They are officially received this evening. One is an open space conservation district zoning map amendment application, and the subsequent subdivision application that's on Horse Pond Road. I believe they came to you informally in the past that was the former location of the Daniel Hand House.
Right,
So that
yeah.
application will be on the agenda next month, and we'll schedule a public hearing out.
Okay.
And another coastal site plan on Middle Beach Road for the construction of a garage. So those are 2.
We'll see them on our next agenda.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments?
Me now.
Okay, in that case, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Do so. Second, Mike, any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you, everyone.